Hi, my loves. Welcome back to another episode. This one is such an important milestone, and it's very exciting because we have finally crossed the 6-month mark of the Kalari diploma. So that means technically, we are a quarter of the way through the 2-year diploma, which feels insane. Honestly, I feel like I have blinked and the entire 6 months has disappeared. Although obviously the day-to-day of it does feel very intense and very challenging. But yeah, the time feels like it's going extremely quickly. So just a very, very extremely brief recap for anybody who this is their first episode. I'm doing a 2-year diploma of Kalaripayattu, which is an ancient Indian sword fighting martial art. And I'm living in Oroville in India to train intensively in this program. And they call it 12 years of training compressed into 2 years. So it is very intensive. It's 5 hours per day, Monday to Friday, 3 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon. And then on the weekends, there's normally 1.5 to 2 hours each morning. And when I started the diploma, it's kind of a little bit of a weird but interesting backstory to it. I introduced one of my very good friends to Kalari, and he came here separately and just had his own discovery of it and was thinking, I knew that I would do the diploma at some point in my life, but I always thought I would maybe wait until I had a midlife crisis when I was 50 or something and do it then. And I had other plans, like I was going to go back to Sri Lanka and I was going to do other things. And then he called me and said he's going to do the diploma and he thinks I should also do it too. So I thought, maybe should I do it too? And he said, I spoke to Guruji and he said, yeah, you can do the diploma. You have to promise me something. You have to commit to come to every single class. And so he was telling me this on the phone, and my instant reaction was like, I don't think that's going to work for me. I want to travel. I want to be able to just, take weekends off and go to nice places with my friends and just go with the flow a little bit more. Maybe want to go back to Australia and see my family. I'm not just going to stay in one place for all of that time. And so I thought maybe I'll do it, but I won't do it like that seriously. And that was my idea in my mind. But then when I got here to India, I thought, actually, no, let me see if I can, just as an experiment with myself. And this is not it's encouraged as a requirement of the diploma, I would say, but it's definitely more of a go with the flow thing for most people, I would say. People have other commitments, people have to leave to get visas, people take rest days when they feel like it, people get injured and take time off, people travel still, everybody's kind of doing it in their own way. And for myself, I really wanted to see literally just as an experiment with myself, could I actually go to every single class no matter what? Every single session, no matter what? And it turns out, so far at this milestone, I could, and I did. So what that looks like, and I know this might sound like bragging or something like that, but I just want to genuinely share what happened. It doesn't feel that remarkable to me. But I just want to share in case you feel like doing some sort of challenge like this and everyone tells you that it's unreasonable, because almost every single person in my life, bar this one friend that's also doing the same thing, he has also been to every single training session. Everybody said, no, that's so silly. You need to take rest days. You will burn yourself out. You're not looking after yourself properly. It's not good for you, blah, 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 blah. Everybody said those things. And actually, it turned out completely fine. So I just want to give myself as an example. If you want to do something very unconventional, people in your life don't understand it, people think you're being reckless, people think you're doing something silly, but you really feel called to do it, just do it, trust your own intuition on these things. Because that's why I wanted to experiment with it. I wanted to see how much can I dive into my own discipline. When I was thinking about doing the diploma after this phone call, I was staying with a friend in Portugal who's known me since my early 20s. She's also from Melbourne. And I was like, but it's going to be such a big commitment. And I'm not a commitment phobe, I would say, but I don't love having an abundance of responsibility on me. And so she was like, look, you've obviously got this freedom thing down pat. You're happy to travel around. You can go with the flow. You're very fluid and flexible. You can make new friends in new places. You're not stuck in one place. And she's like, you've done this for a while now. You've gotten good at this. But what would be a really big up level for you, I think, is to actually just like commit to doing something that's going to be very challenging, and commit to staying in one place and just commit to doing that thing, like become very, very devoted to that thing and just spend all of that time learning like the opposite lessons almost. And I was like, you know what, you're right. She was right. And that was maybe the catalyst for coming. So to all of that, just to say, if there's something that you want to discover about yourself, just see what you could do, because we really have, the thing that I've discovered is that we have power inside of us so far beyond what most people think is normal or what most people experience. But you only get to tap into it if you're going to do abnormal things, because the normal things that everybody experiences are just the normal things that everybody does, you know. People play it safe, people don't want to push themselves too much, people are like don't really want to get uncomfortable, people are too busy, too stressed, don't have enough time, blah, 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 all of those things. So the truth of the matter is, you actually can push yourself extremely hard and extremely far, which is just a groundbreaking discovery in my mind. Like for myself, that is groundbreaking. So I'm going to tell you just what happened, basically, what my life looks like. And then I'm going to share also what things I'm exploring from now on, because what I have realized is there's a huge gap for me that I really want to understand. So I'm going to share with you what that is. So the actual journey itself looked like, for the first 3 weeks, I think, of the diploma, we did 4 hours per day to kind of ease everybody in, because some people were coming with no movement background whatsoever, which to me is crazy, but it's working reasonably well. So for some people it didn't work really, and then for some people they're really like almost a completely different person because of it. So that was 4 hours per day. Then we had like a big festival for Mahashivratri. We started on January 15th. We did that kind of training volume until mid-February. And then we had Mahashivratri and a big festival then. And then really like went to proper training. So we had 5 hours per day, 3 hours in the morning from 6 a.m. till 9 a.m. The first hour is body conditioning. Most people don't come to that class. And then, but that's one that's open to everybody to come to. So all of the diploma students, first and second year, and anybody that's in, you could come here and come to Oroville and go to that class. And then we have 2 hours of long stick training. The first part of which is like just kind of doing all of these stick rotations, kind of ninja kung fu looking things. And then we go through all of the sparring, like just doing the sparring ourselves, and then we do actual sparring together. And then the last 15 minutes to half an hour is more body conditioning, which is always excruciating by that point. And then we have the day to do whatever. And then training in the afternoon is for 2 hours. 4 until 5 o'clock is short stick training. And then 5 until 6 is another body conditioning class that's again open for everybody to come to. And so my schedule within that looks like that I get up at 4 a.m., sometimes 10 to 4, but mostly 4. And then I do a meditation. I was doing a seated meditation, but I'm now doing a standing meditation. I'll speak more about this a bit later. And then I do like 15 or 20 minutes of yin yoga, which is a crucial part of my routine, because I also experimented with that and I realized that's actually so important. Then I do 15 minutes of chanting. Then I make my coffee. I was having decaf, now I'm having 1 teaspoon of coffee in the morning with chicory. And then I have something to eat. I have half of a boiled egg and a carrot, and then some little energy balls that I make. And I have my coffee. I sometimes do some journaling and just put my thoughts down on my laptop or on some paper, or sometimes I listen to a podcast or not really podcast, but maybe a lecture of different things that I'm interested in. And then I have a shower and I get ready for training, and I go to training to start at 6. Then normally the rest of the day looks like different kinds of things. I come home and I do some stretching. Sometimes I wish I did more stretching. I make breakfast. I normally make my egg and banana pancakes for breakfast. And then sometimes I have client calls, sometimes I'm recording podcasts, sometimes I'm doing other work, sometimes I'm painting, sometimes I'm cleaning my house, sometimes I'm going to get groceries. Like the day seems to disappear very, very quickly. And I've gotten very, very, very selective about what socializing I do now. So I really only spend time with people that I really genuinely, really want to spend time with, because my energy is a very precious resource to me at this point in time. And then in the afternoon, I will often read on my rooftop in the sun, which is also extremely important. And then I get ready for afternoon training. Sometimes I do another meditation in the day, which is again part of this thing that I'm exploring and experimenting with. And then I go to afternoon training. I never go out for dinners anymore, basically. I come home after training, have some food, do some chanting again, and then go to sleep. Initially I was going to sleep very early, even around 7:30, 8 o'clock, but now I'm pushing that back a little bit more. Now I'll probably sleep at around 8:30, which that's still okay. And then of course wake up at 4 the next day. So that has been my routine this whole time. And so the entire 6 months has been 6 months, 7 days per week training. And there was 3 official days off. There was 2 days off at Mahashivratri. One, because in Mahashivratri, you stay up the whole day and then you stay up the whole night. The whole point of that night is to stay awake with your spine erect. So we went to the festivities and then spent the rest of the night meditating basically until 5 o'clock in the morning. So that next day off was not really a day off per se. And then there was a day after that where the school was closed those 2 days. There was no classes. I still did my own Kalari practice because I wanted to keep this commitment to myself of like what happens in my body, what happens in my subtle bodies when I do the practice every single day without fail. There was one other day off that we had, which was when we went to Kerala, to the school there. It's the same lineage. It's Guruji's brother and sister there. The day that we got the night bus, we were getting the night bus that night to come back here. That day was also a day off when the school was closed. That was also after a festival there. I again did my own training that day. So just to like be very clear what that was. So, and then people have asked like, what was the process of, what happened when you got sick? What happened when, why, like, do you train when you have your period? What's it like? How does it actually work to go to every training session when you don't always feel like going, when you're tired, when you're fatigued, when you don't feel good, when you're injured, when you're sick, all of these different things. So of course it is, and the point of it is that it is extremely challenging. And anybody that you speak to that has been practicing this particular martial art for a long period of time, we all say the same thing. The pit is just a mirror, basically. It's a place where you go that never changes, and it's just a place where you get to experience yourself in relationship to something unchanging, something unyielding, something unperturbed by any other things, It's like you and the pit doesn't change. The practice doesn't change. You change. So you get to see, and every time you step down, it's very specifically laid out, like you step down into the pit. It's 6 feet down. There's 3 giant steps that you go down. And the first thing that you do when you step into the pit is that you touch it. You touch the earth, the red clay, and you touch your forehead and your chest as like a salutation, as a connection to Mother Earth. Guruji says that the pit itself is the womb of the mother. So we're going back inside of the womb to rediscover ourselves, to grow, to learn, to get nourishment from that place. We connect to the space and to the pit. And every day you know what the practice is going to be. Every day you confront the fact that you probably would still be rather sleeping. You probably are tired. Your body is probably extremely stiff and sore. There's many also hours ahead of you of training. So every day you just confront those things about yourself. So what is it like training when you're sick? Like I just went to all of the training sessions and I did make myself a rule or like a loophole or a concession that even if I only went to the training session and just did the warm-up or even just did the first section of the warm-up, which is the 6 sets of sun salutations, that would be okay. Like no matter how unwell I was, I would still go to the training and do that one. And then if I couldn't do anything more than that, I would just sit and watch the rest of the class. And that was my thing that I had made for myself. Like, you still have to go, but if you actually can't do it, then you can do what you can and then you can watch. So I was sick 3 times that 6 months. Some worse than others. Some were small sicknesses. And it happens that like if one person gets sick in the pit and just like spreads it to everybody. So I had this dilemma of like, is it still bad to go to training if I'm sick? But like 10 other people in the pit are also sick. So it literally doesn't make any difference. And that was obviously difficult. It's difficult to train while you're sick. One time I had a fever also. So that wasn't that nice. But still, I went and I thought, if I can't do it, I would just watch. And then as soon as you're already there, like you're always going to be able to do it anyway. Or so far I've always been able to do it anyway. So that was those 3 times. And then 2 times I had food poisoning. One time in Calicut, which was everybody got food poisoning there from all different things. I don't know what was going on, but I also got it. That was really hard. I didn't sleep. It was extremely hot. I had a fever. I felt so nauseous. I had to leave the training to go and throw up, and I came back to still do the sticks sparring. And then again, I was also just sitting, watching, and then I just thought, no, actually I can do it. So I just did it. And then somewhat recently, like maybe a month ago, I had food poisoning here from I don't even know what. But that was also extremely difficult. I did the training, but I came back and I slept like the entire day in between training sessions and went to training. I was very uncomfortable. But I still managed to do it somehow. Training on the first day of my period is awful. Awful, awful, awful. And to be completely honest, I don't know if I'm managing it that well. I do have to take painkillers. I have to take ibuprofen to be able to do it, to get through the training. So maybe that's not a good thing. I understand that it's like against what I normally speak about a lot in terms of like listening to your body and like trusting your body and all of those kind of things. I have a feeling it has to do with like almost too much tension in my abdomen because of so much maybe muscle and fascia like restriction from training that much and using that part of my body so much to support me. So I feel like that makes it worse. It makes the pain worse. So that is also difficult. Today is the second day. So yesterday was very, very difficult. This morning was pretty uncomfortable also. But yeah, still manageable. There's been days where I've had headaches. There's been days where I just was in a very bad mood. There's been days where I literally like cried in the class. There's been days where I cried almost the whole way through the class. Not like full sobbing, but just like having tears like coming out of my eyes. There's some days where I finished the 5th hour of training that day and literally like I want to cry or I cry, like tears come out because I just didn't think that I would get through it. Some days I feel amazing. Some days, like lately, I've been feeling really good. I had quite a rough 6 weeks recently because I had a few different injuries and lower energy, and I don't know why it was so difficult. Actually, I really didn't feel like myself for a long period of time. I also was like completely off coffee for a while, and now I've gone back to just having 1 teaspoon in the morning, which actually makes a big difference in the training. So I'm also, again, not sure if that's like cheating or not cheating, but it makes me feel good. So I'm doing it for now as an experiment. And it doesn't feel like I'm borrowing too much energy from the future. So that's that. So what did I learn through all of this? I learned, first of all, like our mind is just full of stories of why we should never go, blah, 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 blah. And my teacher now, he has the funniest things that he says, but I really think this is so true. Like one of the girls was getting really confused in one of the stick rotation things, and he was like, don't get confused, just do it. And she was like, yeah, but I'm just trying to think like that. And he was like, don't think, just do it. And then I was thinking constantly about this, and I was like, that's so true. And then like 2 days later, he corrected me of something, and he was like, no, your short stance is like completely wrong. Something very weird is going on there. And I was like, yeah, I know, I'm having a really big problem with it. And he was like, don't have a problem, just fix it. And I was like, yeah, okay. Let me fix it then. And this philosophy has worked so well for this whole experiment of the diploma. Like, don't think, just do it. The minute I even start asking myself any questions, of course I'm not going to want to go to training. I wake up in the morning and the first thing is that my body hurts so much, like just aching. And then if I have specific injuries, I had a really annoying tennis elbow thing for like 6 weeks. That would be throbbing so badly. I often have like cuts in my feet from the pit. They also throb really badly in the morning. My knees are often sore. Just my spine is stiff. And so as soon as I wake up, my first thought is, oh, my body's so sore. I haven't had enough sleep. I want more sleep. I've got to go to training. It's going to be 5 hours. I'm going to have to do Kalaripayattu. So I just don't even let myself think those things. And at the start, it was more difficult, I think, because I had to train myself into this way of being. But it really is the thing of like, just don't even let yourself go there. If you've got a run scheduled and you start asking yourself questions about if you feel like going on the run, you're not going to go on the run. And we're so good at doing this. We are so good at doing it. Your mind is so sneaky like this. So just don't give it a chance to even go there. And I just have like this week coined this term body set instead of mindset. I'm going to have to record a completely separate podcast episode on this because it's a very powerful new thing that I'm discovering how to talk about. But our body has much more wisdom about these things than our mind does. So when I can just rely completely on my body now, my alarm goes off at 4, I get straight out of bed, I go to the bathroom, I go straight to my meditation, I then come and do straight to my stretching, I then, it's like my body is just like literally, it knows what it's doing. And my mind doesn't really have to do anything at all. Just focus on my breath, focus on my meditation, and that's a very, 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 very delightful way to live. Because there's just so much mental angst not there. So everyone says like, how do you do it? How do you do it? How do you do it? But like, you just have to get into this place where you don't ask silly questions because you're going to get silly answers. If you've committed to doing something, you just do it. There's always going to be 1,000 reasons not to. And everybody's like, just like, don't push yourself, listen to your body, blah, 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 blah. But like, what that gets you. It gets you what you've got now. So why not try something completely different? Like, why not actually genuinely not feel like doing something at all, but go and do it and see what happens? Push yourself. Why not? There's a lot of interesting things to learn. So aside from that, what else have I learned? A lot of other things that I've talked about in other podcast episodes. I've learned a lot about managing energy levels and being very meticulous about maintaining my own energy levels, especially with what food I eat and then how I spend my energy. I could not get away with being like very, very reckless in my energy anymore, which I always used to be able to get away with because I had so much of it that it was fine. Now I use most of my energy in the practice. So I need to be very careful about like, what do I do with my day? Because I need to still have 2 hours worth of intensive training left in my system for this afternoon. So I've learned a lot about that. I stopped drinking coffee completely to be able to understand what are my actual real natural energy levels. What does that feel like? That was also an incredibly interesting journey that I highly recommend exploring if you're a big coffee drinker. It really changed my personality a lot, I would say, to stop drinking coffee. For, I think it was 2 months I stopped having it for. And I really got to discover parts of myself that are actually the coffee, they're not me. Then I discovered this huge gap, which is my big ongoing passion at the moment. And the gap is what happens when you push your physical body so far that actually you can't just rely on your physical body anymore. And this is going to maybe sound a bit like too esoteric maybe or that kind of thing, but I assume if you're here, you're good with this kind of talk because this is what I'm going to be talking about from now on basically. But basically in all martial arts, they have this thing which is like a source of energy beyond our physical body. Beyond like just using your muscles, beyond using the force that your muscles can generate. And it's called something different in different systems of practices. Like in Kalari specifically, they talk a lot about prana and also kundalini. So this specific like life force energy that rises up your spine. All of these practices talk about like an energy going up your spine and an energy in your body system. And there's also like qi, and then also qi and shen and jing in Chinese Taoist practices. And there's different names for it in like Tibetan Buddhism practices. But there's this type of energy, and also in Kalari, they refer to it as Shakti, this power, this fire that you can tap into that will kind of like carry your body if you can surrender into the flow of it. So this all sounds very, very poetic, right? And I was always like, wow, that sounds so magical. Like, sign me up. That's what I want. It's so difficult to access. And I feel like now I've gotten to the point in 6 months in where I've gotten probably about as far as I can realistically push my body on a muscular physiological level. And I've had injuries. I've had different periods of being extremely fatigued. I've had periods of being sick. And so I really want to discover, like, what is this force and how do I tap into it? How do I like know it? How do I have it be something that I can access readily? And of course, then it just becomes a big experiment of trying to take all that I know about Kalari, which is extremely just physical practice. And then often after the first 3 hours in the morning, if Guruji is there, he will do this kind of impromptu like chat with us where he shares things, or he tells us that we're not doing good enough, or he shares different wisdoms from the different tantras. He shares different like yogic philosophies. And so I then go away and do my own readings of a lot of those things afterwards to try and understand them better and to try and incorporate them into the practice, into my own practice more, to be able to access, like, what is this thing? What is this source of energy? Like, how do we feel it in ourselves? And I feel like I then was like going almost like on a tangent of like, maybe I can explore these things in terms of like Chinese martial arts and explore like Qigong and Neigong and some of these other things, which are also very linked to things in India as well. I think Neigong is very similar to Kriya Yoga in a lot of ways. But ways of like understanding what are these different energy sources in our body, beyond our physical body, like in our subtle bodies, and how do we access them? How do we activate them and aliven them? How do we get energy flowing through them? How do we then use that energy? Because when you meet people that have this, and in the normal Western world, like, it's difficult to meet people like that, I think. Everyone's just living like a normal city life. But when you meet people with this extremely awakened, enlivened life force energy inside of them, for want of a better term, it is something that something inside of you recognizes and desires and understands that it's not something that we get from just like physical training. It's not something that we get from just like going to the gym. It's not something that we get from just also mindlessly doing the Kalari practice or mindlessly doing a meditation or any of those things. So now I'm on this big journey of like, what is this thing? And of course, in my own true fashion, I get into the thing of like reading all of the things and learning all of the things, and then not always applying all of the things and being impatient to see the results. But I went to a talk last night on the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra by one of the very popular YouTube lecturers on this topic. And he said one very beautiful analogy, actually, which I appreciated a lot and I understood a lot, where he said, if I give you some seeds, can you make them grow? And one of the guys in the audience said, like, yeah, of course I can. And he said, well, how are you going to make them grow? And he said, I would put them in the soil, and then I would water them and make sure that they're in the sun, and then I would look after them and water them every day, and then they would sprout. And then the lecturer was like, yeah, they would sprout, but are you making them sprout? And he was like, you can never make something sprout. All you can do is like create the right conditions and nurture this thing and look after it and make sure that it has all of the things that it needs, and it will sprout in its own time. Your only job is to make sure that the soil is nutritious, there is water, there is sunlight, there is a regular watering schedule, and the things will sprout. Which was so helpful, actually, because I feel like I often get into this mood of impatience where I don't feel like I'm progressing fast enough, or I can see the very advanced students and I want those qualities, you know what I mean? I want to be able to move the way that they move. I want to be able to have this level of like fire and passion inside of me. I want to be able to tap into this Shakti in this way. But you can't force it, just like you can't force the seed to grow. You can only just go to training every single day. You have to water the plant every single day. You have to do the thing every single day. And so that's the journey so far. And then now I'm on my big exploration of this. That's why I've changed my morning meditation to a standing one, because I'm incorporating specific practices from Qigong and Neigong to understand things in my body slowly and being able to breathe, because Kalari is quite fast paced actually, and it's even too fast sometimes to even be able to focus on my technique and my breath properly. At the start it was only technique, and maybe in the last month it's also been like a lot focused on my breath. But I want to be able to feel inside of my body, like, what is happening? Where is energy moving? What is changing? What is shifting? How do we get this quality that they talk about in Qigong of effortlessness? They talk about it in Tai Chi. Like, how do we get this thing of like moving with the flow instead of like forceful, like abrupt, jerky movements of like our muscles in our joints? How do we create that? Like, if you think of like a panther walking in the wild, and then like waiting to pounce and pouncing, and its whole body is this like extremely elasticated, like beautiful quality that most human beings don't have, but we can get that quality. And that is this quality of Shakti. It is this quality of prana and kundalini energy moving. It is the chi moving, and moving with the chi instead of you moving yourself. So that's going to be the next part of the big journey for me. And I'm trying to understand better how to practice these things more in my own time without doing too much extra training on top of 5 hours per day, but still being able to build enough like subtle skills in this that I can slowly start applying them in the faster practice. So it is difficult. It is difficult. We have a performance coming up in 10 days for a special Guru Purnima, I think it's called, on the full moon on the 29th. So they're putting a lot of pressure for us to do better, because they say we're not doing very good. So we are trying to practice more, and my own downfall is focusing too much on the technique and not getting myself into like the fire of the practice enough, of like actually sparring properly, actually fighting, actually hitting hard, like actually being in this like mood where you really just let go and let this thing carry you. So that's the next part of my journey, the next 6 months, the next year and a half, I guess. For you, the listener listening to these things, I wish this could be an encouragement to you of just do something extraordinary with your physical body. Like, really find a practice. Don't listen to anybody that's telling you that you're overdoing it. I want to say also be sensible, and I have a master's in clinical exercise physiology, so I know these things reasonably well, and I also know my body reasonably well. But I did have quite a few injuries throughout this process, and I was still able to train through all of them. And they did just resolve themselves eventually. I of course modified the practice. There was a period of a few weeks where I wasn't sparring properly. There was a period of time where I even couldn't hold the sticks, and I would just be like going through the motions, just like with a pretend stick, basically, like doing all of those things. Sometimes now, to look after my elbow, I don't do push-ups in the classes, and I also don't do like certain other movements in the warm-up, because it's not, if I do that, then my elbow hurts and then I can't spar. So I'm always being like cautious, but you can still show up and keep that beautiful like container of consistency, because it is the key to everything. Just every single day. Every day, without fail. And it builds something, a force inside of you. And it is this lower abdomen center that we are mostly so disconnected from. But that force of will to know that you are going to do something tomorrow, for it to not even be a question in your mind, to know that you're just going to get up and your body is going to just know how to do that thing, and you're not going to let your mind interfere, and you're just going to do it. When you become a person like that, extraordinary worlds open up to you that aren't available to people that don't have that force of will. So find a martial art or something. Find some sort of physical practice that challenges you. Maybe it's rock climbing. Maybe it's running. Maybe it's And maybe you can't run every single day, but you can still go out on your running route and walk it. You can still do that thing, but in a different way, in a gentler way, or you can do some kind of cross-training or something like that. It opens up worlds to you that don't exist for normal people that just do normal life things. So that's been my 6 months. I'm very proud of myself, actually. I feel very, 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 very happy, very content. I feel very excited for the next 1.5 years, to be honest, even though it means still no days off, still no sleeping in, nothing like that. So thank you for following along on the journey. If you got all the way through this podcast, if you've been following along for the diploma itself, come to India and come to some classes. It's really life-changing. And good luck to you. And I highly recommend picking something and challenging yourself in this way. Do it for a month. Do it for 3 months. See if you can do something every single day for 3 months. And see who you are on the other side of that thing. Because it is extraordinary. Love you guys.